I have something of a mixed relationship with shonen. Well, there's a lot of shonen that I do like. I find a lot of it to be overly formulaic, very repetitive, and very prone to try to drag it out as long as possible so that they can produce more episodes and they can release more chapters and make more money, rather than try to be economic with story length or try to focus on just telling the story and the important details rather than just padding it. I know Naruto is a very good example of this because you had filler hell that was something like 100 episodes of the original series that really didn't have anything to do with the ongoing plot because they were waiting to make Shippuden or for more chapters to come out or something. And Inuyasha is also, I think, infamous for just having extremely huge amounts of filler to the point where they had to do kind of a different series in the final act to just get the whole thing wrapped up because it wasn't really going anywhere. So I went into Ranking of Kings with medium to low expectations. The show's very popular, and it was only 24 episodes. So I was like, maybe it's going to be okay, maybe it's not going to be okay. I'm obviously not the target market for shonen, but I think I'll give it a try. And I have to say that I was pleasantly surprised by it. This is actually a really good show. Well, it does follow a lot of generic shonen tropes. It does invert some of them, and it does have a very strong sense of its own identity. It doesn't feel like they just took Naruto or even Dragon Ball and just put some paint on it and put it out there and didn't put any effort in. And I think when it comes to shonen, that's one of the biggest compliments that you can give something is that it doesn't feel like it's just some rubber stamp thing that was shoved out for the to try to get another series to try to catch lightning in the bottle that like how they did with Naruto or One Piece. So Ranking of Kings takes place somewhere between the medieval era and the ending of the ancient era. The reign of the old gods is coming to an end, and the old elder races, such as giants, are gradually dying off in favor of a world dominated by humans. Now, there's one kingdom, the kingdom of Boss, ruled by King Boss, who's a giant. And he has two sons. He's sick and he's going to die soon. So there's a bit of a question over who's going to succeed him. His eldest son, who looks like the youngest son, is Boji. Now, Boji is incredibly short and weak, despite being the child of two giants. King Boss's first wife was a giant, particularly the strongest giantess, I think, in the world at the time. But once again, Boji is extremely small. He looks a lot younger than his age, and he has no physical strength whatsoever. His second son, Daida, is a product of a marriage to a human woman, Hailing, who's actually my favorite character. And Daida's largely what any king would want in an heir. He's very hardworking, but he's also very imperious, arrogant, and prideful. Something else that kind of complicates that's the whole succession is that Boji was born deaf, so he can't really speak properly. He just kind of makes incomprehensible noises. It does turn out later on that he can read people's lips, but you have a boy who's very short, looks a lot younger than he is very weak, can't listen, has no ability to hear or really speak, and then you have a good-looking, taller, intelligent, regal prince who's the son of the current queen, but he's not really in line to inherit because he's the younger of the two. And this is where we get into one of the first of kind of the inversions that we get here. So Boji is very much kind of a fairy tale atmosphere, or rather, Ranking of Kings is very much a fairy tale atmosphere. So you would expect Queen Hilling to be the wicked stepmother trope, who's going to deny her the firstborn son the throne in favor of her own flesh and blood. And that more or less is what happens. When King Boss dies, the Royal Council has a vote in which they declare that Daida should succeed his father and that Boji isn't fit to be king. Now, this comes out of a genuine belief on her part, that Boji just isn't strong enough or capable to take the throne. It doesn't purely come from a desire to make her own son rule so that her flesh and blood will be the next person in the dynasty. We see during flashbacks that when she married Boss, she was initially very affectionate with Boji. And although she's a bit more practical and a bit more distant than she used to be, she does deeply love him and does consider him to be her son as much as her own flesh and blood is. And when she thinks Boji dies later, she gets absolutely devastated by it. And she's really happy when he shows up again. And she has healing abilities that she uses whenever he gets hurt. So that's kind of something that I like, that it's a bit of inversion, that they decided to give kind of the wicked stepmother character a bit more depth to her. While Boji is a lot smarter than he would seem given his inability to talk and hear, it is questionable whether he kind of has the temperament or personality to be king. I don't think he's someone who really likes to do paperwork and spend long time in meetings and stuff like that. So Daida, his brother, may very well be more accomplished for that. So basically, Boji gets replaced by Daida as king, and he goes off on a journey to become stronger. And this is where the show kind of starts to get more like something like Dragon Ball. He meets up with this thing here named Kage, or Shadow, who's from a race of cursed people. And I initially thought he was going to be kind of annoying, but I actually kind of like the character. He's basically Boji's best friend. He can read Boji's, I'm not sure if it's his mind or his micro expressions, but he's able to kind of be his spokesman and kind of communicate on his behalf. And he's kind of the one person who's always there for him and always depends upon. So Boji, in kind of Dragon Ball style, is going off to seek a tutor who will make him strong enough to be able to defeat his brother and regain his throne, and to prove to his father that he's not a waste of space and he's worthy of his father's legacy. So he goes to visit the king of the underworld, who trolls him. It turns out the king of the underworld's brother is actually the person who they need to have train him. So he goes to him, and then we get a training montage. It's a very King Kai-ish like thing with Goku. Boji has a very similar personality to Goku. He is a shonen protagonist after all, or what's his name, Tanjiro? Whatever the protagonist is of Demon Slayer. You know what I'm saying? The guy who's completely determined, has an incredibly pure heart, will forgive anybody anything. And he does eventually become powerful, because it turns out that, well, he doesn't have any of the strength of a giant. He has all of the agility and speed of a giant, but in a much smaller body, so it's very magnified. So he basically becomes like the ultimate dex fighter, who can dodge extremely well, who can hit pressure points and that kind of thing. And it's kind of cool always to see like a hero who's a little bit different, who's not just like, I don't know, a magic user who just shoots giant blasts of lightning, or someone who's just really strong and just knocks everything out of his path. I always like int heroes or dex heroes, or just kind of heroes that do something a little bit different. So while Boji's off training, Daida gets seduced by a magic mirror that begins to corrupt him, begins to manipulate him, makes him become more prideful, become more cold, make bad decisions. And it eventually turns out that there's this QT inside the magic mirror who has a really creepy Electra-like relationship with his father. And I won't go through the entire plot of the show, but about a couple episodes in, Daida gets possessed by the spirit of his dead father, who Miranjo, who's the spirit inside of the mirror, is trying to bring back. So we have all these different people with their own agendas. We have Healing, who's trying to save her two sons. We have the king of the underworld, who's trying to kill Miranjo in revenge. We have Miranjo, who's trying to resurrect King Boss and help him to achieve his dreams. We have Boji. And as the show goes on, it just kind of builds steam and more stuff happens, and we get more and more plots and subplots. And I think, generally speaking, it winds up pretty well. All the loose ends get resolved, and I think it ends in a largely respectable fashion. Although there is one aspect of it with two characters who get together that doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, I guess like there's a QT involved, but other than that, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But overall, Ranking of Kings, I definitely give two thumbs up to. I'd probably give it a 7 to a 7.5 out of 10, which is very high for shonen for me. But I did enjoy the show quite a bit. And if you're interested in shonen or fairy tales or just kind of something of this style, I definitely give it a try. So that's the review. I hope you enjoyed it. God bless, and more content to come.